ISIL, operating in the neighboring Sinai Peninsula, is threatening to infiltrate and take control of Gaza, giving the well-armed, well-funded extremist group close proximity to Israel. The joint interest of keeping ISIL out of Gaza is pushing Israel and Hamas leaders to secret talks. If ISIL infiltrates and rocket fire ensues, Israel may launch a new campaign on the already beleaguered Gaza Strip. Stephanie Fried, CCTV, Jerusalem.
Joining me now in the studio is Hussein Ibish. He's the senior resident scholar of the Arab Gulf States Institute here in Washington, D.C. Thanks so much for joining us. First of all, bring us to where we are. The two-state solution has been the solution for a generation since the Oslo Accords first in 1993.
Oh, even before, since Resolution 242, since 1967.
That's right. So why are we at this point now where it just doesn't seem viable?
Well, because for 20 years there have been direct negotiations, indirect negotiations, all manner of different talks between Israelis and Palestinians, sometimes on their own, as in Oslo, sometimes brokered by the United States, sometimes backed up by the Quartet, which is virtually the entire international community. And we haven't gotten closer than the division of the West Bank and the occupied territories into areas A, B, and C. So it's frustration. And at the same time, the situation has continued to deteriorate, particularly because of the expansion of settlements. So 20 years ago, we had 200,000 settlers. Now we have 600,000 settlers. So it's just become much more difficult.
And also we have, of course, recently Benjamin Netanyahu re-elected as Prime Minister, a more right-wing coalition. He even went on and said during the election campaign there will be no two-state solution.
Under his watch, yes, he said so. And he's got a lot of extremists in his cabinet.
And what about on the Palestinian side?
Well, a great deal of frustration you've had since the Second Intifada in 2000, late 2000. You've had radicalization on both sides. Israeli politics went radically to the right, as you just mentioned. Palestinian politics had the emergence of Hamas as a challenge to the PLO. Both Hamas's strategy of armed resistance and fighting Israel to these wars, and we just had the last one in the summer of 2014, and the PLO's approach of negotiations have run aground. Neither have delivered anything. So Palestinians are really without a direction, without a strategy, and wondering what their options are.
Yeah, because a two-state solution always was on the premise that the West Bank and Gaza would be united. But we have Hamas firmly entrenched now in the Gaza Strip. Right. We have the PLA, the Palestinian Authority, in Ramallah, in the West Bank. Is that any sign of them coming together?
Not really. They had an agreement to form a national unity government, which they did in theory, but it was never allowed to operate in Gaza by Hamas. And there are mutual recriminations, and they couldn't agree on anything. And now it seems to be breaking up. So the efforts at Palestinian unity, political unity, have really been stymied by the fact that it's impossible to fit the square peg of Hamas armed resistance and wanting to create an Islamic State in the whole of historical Palestine into the round hole of the PLO and the PA's efforts to create an independent Palestinian state alongside Israel in the occupied territories. Plus, they don't agree about religion in the state. They don't agree about the nature of Palestinian society, the role of women, etc. They really don't agree about anything except that they're all Palestinians.
Yeah, Mahmoud Abbas, Abu Mazen has also done the diplomatic front, hasn't he? He's trying to create a Palestinian state through the United Nations. They now have non-member observer status like the Vatican at the UN, haven't gone to the Security Council. Right. But has that worked, or is it largely symbolic?
Well, it's almost entirely symbolic because it doesn't change anything on the ground. Now, it is the non-member observer state upgrade from a couple of years ago is potentially historically significant because every entity that's been a non-member observer state, except for the Vatican, which doesn't want to be a member state, has become a member state, either on their own or as part of a united Vietnam, united Germany, or whatnot. But it seems an inevitable next phase would be independence. But when you look at the realities on the ground, this upgrade at the UN seems fanciful.
This sort of ability to go to the UN, joining the International Criminal Court, cultural organisations like UNESCO, you can see the strategy.
Absolutely. You can see the strategy to apply pressure to build the international consensus, to strengthen the presence of Palestine diplomatically, and that's all been marginally effective. The problem is the Israeli settlement project goes forward, and consolidation of the greater Israeli state is kind of emerging at the real level, where the Palestinian state is emerging at the symbolic level. Obviously, what's real trumps what's symbolic every time.
Yes, one Israeli diplomat said the day after the vote to give non-observer member status to Palestinians, I look out my window in Israel and nothing has changed on the ground.
Right.
And has it changed actually anything for the Palestinian people on the ground? No.
No, it hasn't. It did have one effect, which was to impoverish the Palestinian government because the West retaliated by cutting aid and Israel withheld the tax refunds that it collects on behalf of the Palestinians import-export. It brought down Salam Fayyad, who was the most effective political leader the Palestinians have had in their modern history, I believe, and destroyed the state-building project, which was, again, reaping a lot of benefits, especially in terms of quality of life. So it actually had a negative impact on the lives of Palestinians, I think.
So there is this frustration now in Palestinian territories, especially among the young with their older leaders who are divided. We talked about the failure of a two-state solution. There's talk of a one-state solution. What would that be?
Well, it's an aspirational idea. There are really three versions of it. The one you're talking about is the idea of a kind of South African solution where you have a single democratic state for everyone, all the Israeli Jews plus all Palestinians, including all the refugees. And basically, it's an idea that has a constituency among some Palestinians, especially on the left, none at all among Jewish Israelis, and it seems to be really a kind of fanciful notion. There also is the one-state idea of Hamas to have a single Islamic state in the entire territory, and the one state that is real and has been continuing to emerge over time, which is the Greater Israel, united, practically, but politically divided, and everything separate and unequal, with extreme discrimination against most of the Palestinians who are not citizens.
So like an apartheid system almost.
It is essentially that, yeah.
Well, let's talk about the other solution in terms of one state. 4.5 million Palestinians able to vote in Israel, able to participate in a democracy. That would be the end of the Jewish-Israeli state,
without question, and that's why there's no chance, I believe, that you can convince Jewish Israelis to agree to it, and there's no force or set of forces that would be able to coerce them into agreeing to it. So I see it as a quixotic aim. It can't be realized. There are many different plans, visions for the future that one side or another won't agree to, that would have to agree to it to make it work. Whenever you see something like that, like the Israeli-Jordanian option, where they annex what they want and give the rest of the West Bank to Jordan and Gaza to Egypt, this again is fanciful. The Egyptians won't go for it, the Jordanians, the Palestinians. So whenever there's a party to an idea that won't agree to it, you know the idea is a non-starter, and I'm afraid the one-state solution falls into that category.
What about if the campaign starts for voting rights, civil rights, something that can gain a lot of sympathy internationally and also on the ground? Would that push Israel maybe to even consider now readopting the two-state solution because it's a less bad option for them?
This is a really fascinating idea, and I think it's one that's worth pursuing because in the end, the Israelis have the power. There's such a power asymmetry between Israel and the Palestinians. They have the power to say no to the Palestinians. The question is, do they have the power to say no to themselves? Because they really do have to choose between a Jewish, and especially a Jewish and democratic state, and the occupation. It's really an internal Israeli question. The Palestinians can force this by saying, right, if you won't give us our freedom, give us our rights, and really sort of push that question. I think it could force the Israelis to confront the situation that they don't have an alternative to a Palestinian state for dealing with these people. What are they going to do with them? Make them live without any rights or citizenship in perpetuity? I think they know that's not going to work. They can't grant them full citizenship, so what are they going to do? I think in the end, a Palestinian state is inevitable because of that, or let's say it's not inevitable, but I like the way my friend Aaron Miller put it. He said it's too big to succeed now, but it's too big to fail in the long run, and I think that's right.
Hussein Ibish, thank you so much for joining us. Always fantastic to have you on the show. Joining us next is the former Deputy of Mission at the Israeli Embassy and a Palestinian-American human rights lawyer. That's coming up next on The Heat. Stay with us.